Computer's running a little bit slow. Zach, do we have you? Do I have you, Zach?
I'm not getting any audio.
No audio here. Let me see. Let me see what's going on here. I know Zach's got a new MacBook, but I don't know if that's what the technical difficulties are. But good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on another edition of the Batter Up. Birdland Caravan is in full swing as we are approaching spring training, just about 2 weeks away from less than 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training for the Orioles, and a lot of excitement brewing around the team, especially with the Caravan. It seems like the team culture is in midseason form as we speak today. To a few more events. I believe that they have events today and tomorrow going on. Mike Elias making a bunch of comments yesterday to the media to kind of kick things off for the team. While we figure out some of Zach's technical difficulties here, do want to remind everybody today's show is, oh, you're good. You have audio now?
Good now, yeah.
Good. Awesome. Well, even still, today's show is still brought to you by Royal Farms. Royal Farms is heating up the grill this winter. Get any grilled chicken sandwich at your neighborhood Rofo for just $6.99. Plus, it's just $20 for a 12-piece mix of their world-famous chicken, and they've got you covered for breakfast, too. For a limited time, you can buy any breakfast sandwich, perhaps one of their new Southern-style biscuits, plus their baby cake, hash browns, and any size beverage for just $7. And speaking of breakfast beverages, try Rofo's new coffee and cappuccino flavors, mocha and horchata. Get to your neighborhood Royal Farms today for these deals and more. All right, Zach. So Birdland Caravan kicked off, and a few things that we kind of noticed yesterday in the comments that Mike Elias made. Talking about the starting rotation, we kind of assumed that they would be going with a 6-man rotation, and apparently they're going with a 5-man rotation. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but were you surprised to hear about that, considering the fact that they've got legitimately 8 or 9 pitchers that can pitch at the big league level out of the starting rotation?
Yeah, I mean, eventually someone's going to be left out. Does that mean that Povich goes back to AAA? Because you only have so many spots. I mean, you pretty much have already cemented, Grayson, Eflin, Morton as your top 3. Kramer likely is your number 4. I feel like he's deserved that. You paid Sagano $13 million. You still have Suarez. You still have Povich. I mean, you're actively still trying to acquire other players, according to his comments. Like, when are you running out of room here?
Right. I mean, you're looking at what you've got with, like you said, Eflin, Grayson, Morton, Kramer, Sagano. Those are going to be your top 5. And Elias said, when he was asked, do you plan on moving a starting pitcher into the bullpen? He said, potentially, but a lot has to do with health. And right now we've got a pretty healthy bullpen. So I don't really know. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, so I don't really know if that's a feasible option. So you look at the bullpen: Felix Bautista, Cionel Perez, Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez. You've got Kittredge, Keegan Aiken, Yenier Cano. And then you've got an 8th spot. Because if you're going to have a 5-man rotation, presumably you're going to have an 8-man bullpen to go along with a 13-man position player roster. So you're looking at Suarez, Povich, Rogers, and McDermott for that final spot. These are all starters. He's not committing to putting a starter in the bullpen, and you really only have one spot, which I would imagine Suarez has the inside track for because he doesn't have any options remaining. He was a key cog on this team, both out of the bullpen, but mostly out of the rotation last year. Really stepped up big in Grayson Rodriguez's absence down the stretch. Cade Povich proved that he began to prove that he's a quality big league starting pitcher. Trevor Rogers was a Rookie of the Year finalist as recently as 2021. Then Chase McDermott doesn't have a ton left to prove at the big league level, though I think he's on the outside looking in compared to the other 3.
Yeah.
Not all 4 of these guys are going to be on this big league roster. One of them is likely to be on this roster. So I can see them having a rotation in Norfolk of Povich, Rogers, and McDermott. being their top three. And I think that as we're reading the tea leaves, that makes the most sense right now. But if Povich and Rogers both have big spring trainings and look the part, what do you do?
Well, I mean, we're still forgetting about some of the guys they signed out of the Mexican League that throw north of 100 miles an hour. Like, those play pretty good in bullpens usually. Now, can they throw strikes in spring? That'll be the question. But if they do, like, that just throws another curveball into this entire conversation, because you're not going to leave a guy who's throwing 100 miles an hour and throwing strikes out of your bullpen. Like, how many guys do we have that even throw north of 97? One?
Right.
You need guys that throw hard. So, yeah, I mean, I could certainly see somebody or multiple guys being in AAA that probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and then you talk about, you had mentioned that they stated that they're still in the market to acquire more talent to, make this team better. And that's what he kind of said based off of the questions about the starting rotation. And he said, I think we're targeting improvements to this team. He had excitement about the current roster and how they're well positioned to contend in the East, but also said, but we still have time on the clock before the offseason is over, and say there's still free agents out there and sometimes trades happen late. So, Michael King with the Padres, we were talking a lot this past week just over social media about how the Orioles could be the front runner to trade for him, but then he goes and signs a 1-year pact with the Padres with a mutual option for next year. That's added to these contracts a lot. It kind of lets them, like, he's going to get money regardless. So it kind of just makes things easier for the first year of that essentially 2-year deal.
Yep.
And basically what people are alluding to with that is that it means that he's probably not going to be traded. Is that kind of what you got when you saw that deal as well?
Yeah, I mean, the deal is tailored to help them financially this year. But look, I mean, it's a business. If somebody gives them an offer that they can't refuse that makes them better past just this year, why wouldn't you take that? Like, that, this contract is also built for every other team in baseball too, like, because now he's movable. You didn't go give him some astronomical arbitration number. You gave him a very good number that helps a hell of a lot of teams in baseball too, not just yourself. Could he be a mid-season trade candidate? I mean, depends. I mean, if they fall flat on their face to start the season, yeah. And, then a team picks up, like $1 million to end the season or something like that. Like, every team in baseball will jump at that, especially for, what was the mutual option? Like 12 or 15 or something like that?
I think it was 15 million.
Yeah,
I think it's 15, yeah.
For a 1-year deal, Michael King, like, who wouldn't take that on?
Right.
I feel like every single team in baseball would. They give themselves an opportunity to financially afford him this year and also give them flexibility to trade him for some high-end pieces anytime, honestly.
Yeah, to me, when I think it was Bob Nightingale that said it yesterday, that said that they got this deal done and it makes it so they don't have to trade him. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I think it makes it easier.
It does.
To trade him.
Especially to the Orioles, because they love 1-year deals.
Exactly. 1-year deals with a mutual option. Like, they sign up for that in blood for a guy like Michael King. He immediately moves to the top of your rotation based off what he did last year and the prospect status that he had when he was coming up in the Yankee system. And then as a sidebar, you look at the Padres and you look at what they traded to get him. They basically traded why can't the most famous player in the world right now, and I can't remember his
Soto?
name. Yeah, thank you, Juan Soto. I think I was mixing Soto and Cano, and anyway, but they trade Soto to get Michael King as part of that package, basically because they knew that Soto wasn't going to resign with the Padres, and now they have a need they have a need for a guy like a Juan Soto, which is kind of funny that now they're trying to trade that guy. That the team is completely broke, and I'm wondering what they're going to do.
Could you imagine if they didn't trade C.J. Abrams and James Wood?
Yeah.
Like, your outfield would be James Wood, Jackson Merrill, and Fernando Tatis. That would probably be the best outfield in baseball, arguably against the Dodgers. And then you would have your shortstop that you're missing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is just it's crazy what the Padres have kind of gotten themselves into, and to not have a ton of postseason success. Like, they got to an NLCS once or twice, but they missed the playoffs a couple of years after signing all these big name players, these huge contracts. And it's funny because we always compare the Orioles to the Padres, because it's like the Orioles are the number 25 market in baseball, and the Padres are number 26 or vice versa. And the Padres payroll seems to be $150 million above the Orioles every year, if not more. And now you're looking at why big markets have a hard time carrying rosters like that, because the Padres are in a situation where they can't spend any money, and they have to figure out what to do with the money that they are spending because they can't afford the players that they have on their roster. It's quite the cluster F over there in San Diego right now. But back to the Orioles. So looking to do a 5-man rotation 7-6, you're going to have a roster crunch here. And then we also find out that Felix Bautista is not going to be a full go in spring training, that they're going to kind of ease him back into competition. It's going to be a slow ramp up for him. And Zach, you've been talking about this all offseason. The Orioles need to add a legitimate reliever with legitimate closing experience in case Felix Bautista isn't ready to go. And right now, I don't know that you can say that that guy's on the roster. And they're saying that Bautista's going to be ready for opening day. But even if he is he the mountain or is he just Felix Bautista?
That's what I'm worried about. That's why I've been clamoring for another closer this whole time. It's a scary situation because if he comes back, okay, he's not ramped up. That's not good to hear. Like, I want this guy, hitting the ground running. So, okay, you ease him in. Okay, he's ready for opening day. Can he close a game if he's on the roster at opening day? Can he go more than 4 or 5 batters? Like, what are we getting? Is he throwing 100 miles an hour or is he throwing 93, 94? Like, I don't want that guy on the big league team if he's not throwing 100. Like 94, 95 for his fastball, probably getting hit pretty hard. So do you leave him down in AAA to kind of keep rehabbing? Or, I mean, I understand some people like Sir Anthony Dominguez. I think he's a great pitcher. Do I think he can handle the 9th inning right now in the AL East? Maybe. Effectively? I don't know. I mean, could he handle it? Sure.
A lot of home runs.
Right. I mean, and he's erratic at times. I mean, maybe he comes out and he pitches really well. That would be fantastic. They have closer experience, but it's in Soto, Dominguez, and Kittredge. Mm-hmm. 2 out of those 3, you don't know what you're going to get. And the other one is north of 35 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just saw that with Craig Kimbrell. Could he hold it down for the first half? Sure. I wouldn't care. But a bona fide number 2 closer would have been great. A lot of those guys slot better in the 6th, 7th, 8th roles than they do in the 9th role. I feel like we talk about this every year.
Yeah, and you look at, Carlos Estevez just signed with, was it the Mets or the Blue Jays that he signed with? Or am I?
Estevez?
Yeah.
The Royals.
The Royals. I knew it was a blue team. He just signed with the Royals. Tanner Scott signed with the Dodgers. The Orioles were rumored to be interested in him, but they didn't want to go 4 years on Tanner Scott. You're kind of, there's somebody there's somebody in the system that could surprise you who's going to throw over 100, who can, like you were saying, one of those Mexican League guys in the Orioles just signed that, can throw over 100, they can hit their spots and potentially be a big time reliever for you. But I feel like every year they're banking on finding a diamond in the rough. And you're not going to find CNL Perez or Danny Coulomb out there on the scrap heap every year. It's just not going to happen like that. And especially, who are you going to find that's going to be able to adequately replace Felix Bautista if he's not the guy they need him to be? Now, if he's throwing 94, there's a whole other issue there. Because that's significant drop off. That's a 9-mile-an-hour drop off of his fastball. But we talked about it before. Even if he's throwing 97, 98, that's still enough of a drop-off for a fastball that maybe looks like it has rising action out of his hand, but it is fairly flat. 97, 98 gets hit out of the ballpark a lot, or at least or drilled into the gaps a lot in Major League Baseball. I do think that this team is really great at getting guys to come back and really developing guys and rehabbing guys. And I don't think that they're going to put him out there if he's not who they need him to be. Right. But at the same time, we saw them do that with Kimbrell last year to the point where they had no choice but to DFA him. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm looking at this like, if they're going to ramp him up and that's what it needs for him to kind of be eased back in the game action, then he can get towards the end of spring training, maybe pitch back-to-back days at the end of spring training, and you're like feeling pretty good about him. Okay, I can live with that. If you're ramping him up, and it's the same thing as what we saw last year, where the first day of spring training, it's Kyle Bradish has a partial UCL tear, and John Means is a month behind the other pitchers. And then the next thing you know, they're lost for the season 2 months in.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a good look. That's not a good look for the team. And somebody, Daniel Pitts has commented on this. He said, can we even trust Elias that he'll just have to ramp up? He seems to really downplay any Orioles injury. And that's kind of what I'm alluding to here. How serious is this? We heard he's been throwing bullpens since the fall. How is he? And we've been told all off season he's going to be ready to go in spring training. And now we hear less than 2 weeks beforehand that that's not the case. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's like the Ravens. You can't trust a single thing you hear out of it. Mm-hmm. Perryman had a knee injury that was only supposed to be a couple weeks, and it was season ending. Like, I'm not saying that Bautista is that situation, but like, I don't know. I'll take a silver lining on it. I've seen the bullpens. I know he was asked to stop posting the videos of himself, but we watched him with the videos with the string drill, which is a really great drill. So maybe with him, more focusing on hitting spots is nicer. I think we see him pitch once every 4 days, maybe in spring. I bet you don't even see him pitch a game probably for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And look, he's probably down there right now. They always bring in injured players before pitchers and catchers, so he's likely there right now. Mm-hmm. And they probably have a pretty decent idea where he's at, and they might just take it slow. It all depends. We'll find out when pitchers and catchers report, because Mike will be there and he'll talk about it and stuff. I'm nervous. I always am in these situations. I was nervous with Kimbrel last year. I wanted Kimbrel to be the 8th guy, go get a real closer. Kimbrel in the 8th inning would have been really nice last year. Just with how we use our bullpen is what scares me. I mean, can Dominguez, if he's the closer to kind of start in April, can he go pitch 4 days a week, or right, 4 of the first 6 days? Like, that's how we use our bullpen. And we certainly know Felix is not going to be ready for that. They'll probably at least May, probably June. Like, yeah, cool, he's your closer, but can he do it a lot in a row, like how we like to use our closer? I don't think so. I mean, that's to me why I would want to go get another bona fide closer, because you could have eased him back at that point. If you would have went and got a Tanner Scott and there were some lefties coming up, okay, Tanner, you get the ball tonight. Felix, go ahead and relax a little bit. We don't need you tonight. Take care of your arm. Tanner goes 2 days. Okay, Felix, now it's your turn. Like, yeah, it would have been a lot easier. I would trusted Tanner more than I would trust Dominguez. I mean, do I trust Dominguez for one game? Sure. Back-to-back games? No, I don't. I'm sorry. I like the guy. Back-to-back, it doesn't work out in his career too often. Do I trust Soto, in the 9th inning? Maybe. If he proves it last year, no.
It's funny, though, because, again, we've said it on the show throughout this off season. When Soto came over here, the first, 2-3 weeks that he was here, we were, tightening up everywhere. Yeah. When he came into the game. So, because he couldn't throw the ball in the plate, and then when he did, he was giving up a lot of base hits. And now we're talking about him as this key piece to the bullpen. And yeah, he really turned it on down the stretch when he pitched really, really well for them. But I'm not too old or too young to remember when we were nervous every time he came through that bullpen door. So to now be talking about, is he potentially ready for the 9th inning? I'm nervous about that, absolutely. And like you said, you talk about how this bullpen gets used. I'm a known. I'm quite averse to Brandon Hyde being the manager for the team. I've been outspoken about it for 3 years now. I kind of shut up about it in 2023 because the team was just too good. He didn't seem to do that. He couldn't get in the way. The team was just they were a wagon that year. But in 2022, I felt like he took them out of the playoffs. 2024, I felt like the bullpen and rotation decisions and his lineup decisions and pinch-hitting decisions down the stretch really cost the team. And so before we get into that, we got to pay the bills. I want to remind everybody, today's show brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. The reason I bring this up is because The offense wasn't good down the stretch. The bullpen was, you were consistently seeing Cano, Perez, Webb, and
Birch.
well, maybe not so much Webb till the end of the year, but you were seeing Birch Smith, but really it was down the stretch. It was a lot of Cano, Perez,
Webb.
Dominguez, and Soto and Webb, and those guys seemed to pitch every single day. And the bullpen was perfectly fine in the postseason. The team gave up 3 runs in 2 postseason games. So it's not really on the pitching here, but you look at the decisions that are made. And pitching to Bobby Witt with the go-ahead run on base, which ended up being the winning run in both situations, both times in the playoffs, when he led the majors in batting and in hits, and letting that burn you. And in the second game is the most egregious to me because you had your lefty on the mound, Perez, who hadn't given up a home run in 2 years. With Bobby Witt coming up to the plate, you balk him and you let him face the lefty Pasquantino, who hadn't played in 6 weeks. But instead, you take Perez out, you put Cano in. Cano gives up the infield RBI single that was hit like 107 miles an hour off the bat by Witt. And then Pasquantino gets out as the next batter, but now the damage has already done. That run scored that ended up being the winning run. Why would you not just put Witt on base with 2 outs and face with a base open and face Pasquantino and not let that run score? And I look at that, and it's a microcosm of a lot of the decisions that Brandon Hyde made with his bullpen. You've talked with some former players who played for Buck Britton. He's on the Major League staff now. Robinson Chirinos is on the Major League staff now. You know, the Orioles, they're trying to put together a roster that can contend for a World Series. And really, we're trying to put the horse before the wagon. We've got to win a
or game.
Right. Before we can start talking about World Series contention. And how hot is Brandon Hyde's seat right now? And how much is he going to be under the microscope when it comes to these decisions? And furthermore, Zach, how many of these decisions are actually his in the game and with who's going to be in the lineup and so on and so forth?
I put him in the kind of category that Joe Girardi had in Philly. This is your team. You have a very good team, but if it crumbles, a change will probably happen fairly fast. And when I mean crumble, I mean be 20-25. So it likely probably get 40, 50 games. I don't see this team doing that, but that would be a tall tale sign. The decisions with the bullpen are the toughest because I don't personally like how they use the bullpen. I know it's like an organizational thing where the guy gets just the 1 inning typically. I hate that. We watch other teams use their guy. He gets 2, 3 innings. You know, if he's hot, just God, leave him out there. It saves other people. If Cano can get through the 6th and the 7th, why not? I don't have to use Soto that night, or I don't have to use Dominguez that night. They're available tomorrow now, probably even healthier. But obviously, if multiple guys haven't pitched in a few days, then it's fine. But to consistently do that is when you wear the guys down. And our bullpen, and I was on the radio with Glenn on 105.7 earlier this year. At one point, our bullpen was ranked 8th in baseball early in the season. They were pretty decent. And then the more they got used and the more they got used, they finished, 26th or something like that? They got destroyed. They just...
The second half is brutal.
Yeah, it's too much use. And then when you get down late in the year, as fans, we're never going to hear it. So-and-so's down today. You might hear because it's obvious, Cano pitched 3 days in a row, he's down. But when you walk to the ballpark one day, you might not know that, Cino Perez just doesn't feel good, or Cano just doesn't feel good, or, they've got, something going on with their stomach, they can't keep any food down. We don't hear that too often. So when you look at it, you're man, why are you using this guy? He just, stunk last night, or why are you using this guy, or why are you not using this guy? Because honestly, we don't know all of it. You only get tids and pieces because you don't really want the other team to find out either. So some of those decisions are based on that, and it makes him look bad because we don't know. And then other ones, it's just okay, if the guy is up and you didn't choose him, what the hell's going on? I'll go back to Buck Showalter not using Zach Britton in Toronto in the playoff game. Like, that kind of stuff is a bigger deal than the stuff we don't know. Problem is, you never know when you don't know, if that makes sense. You don't know when somebody's down that night because they just don't want to talk about it too often. So I'll chalk some of that stuff up to that. It's kind of why I'm not too hard on Brandon. I am sometimes. But the bullpen's a funny thing, especially with how we use it. I feel like I don't want to say mismanage it. It's just don't have guys continually go one inning. Like, it's okay to let a guy go a little bit.
There were games where there was one game in particular early in the year. I think they were playing Kansas City. It may have been the game that Adley hit the or maybe it was Toronto. It may have been Toronto where Adley hit the walk-off home run where what's his name? Kevin Brown had that epic call, truly Adley.
Oh yeah.
Call. That was pretty awesome. But I think it was in that game. Danny Coulomb came in and he threw like
one pitch, wasn't it?
One pitch, got a double play ball, got out of the inning, and then he's not used in the next inning. They brought in Jacob Webb, and Webb gave up the game. Like he didn't give up the game, but he gave up the lead. The game was tied after Webb came in. It's like, why would you not use Danny Coulomb? He gets lefties and righties out. He threw one pitch, and that happened a lot. Where Cano would come in and he'd throw 6 pitches, and he's thrown 26 pitches the entire week. He's thrown, and it's like Saturday. He throws 6 pitches, gets an out, gets out of the inning, and then he's not back out for the next inning. Why are you taxing your bullpen when you don't need to? When you have guys that can get dudes out who haven't thrown a lot of pitches, maybe it's because it's too ups and they threw a lot of normal pitches. I don't know that stuff, but for me, you're wasting your bullets. You're absolutely wasting bullets, and so like I want Brandon Hyde to be a manager that instills a lot of confidence in me. I want him to be a guy where he makes a move and I'm like, I totally understand that move. For me, he's not that guy. And I want every year I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then by midseason, I'm like losing my mind over the stuff that he's doing. And like, trust me, I don't want to be outspoken about it, but at the same time, like I have a show, I have a responsibility. I'm not going to not say how I feel about these situations. If people think it's negative, I think I'm being realistic. And then you look at the fact that he has now had Buck Britton and Robinson Chirinos added to his staff after a lot of us. And the calls for his head were getting louder and louder as the season wore on, especially in the second half. A lot more people were jumping on the Brandon Hyde's the problem train last year. And then Daniel gives the comment, if we miss the playoffs or lose in the first round again, Hyde is gone. That's why Buck Britton was added to the staff. He's his replacement. Robinson Chirinos has been forecasted as a former big league manager also. But Buck Britton has won a lot of games with a lot of the guys that are on this roster. A lot of these young players came up playing for Buck Britton and have a really good relationship with the guy. Can you speak at all to the relationship the players on this roster have with Buck Britton, what he means to those players? And is he potentially the next Brandon Hyde replacement, or do the Orioles likely go in a direction where they find somebody who has a lot of successful big league experience to be their next manager if it goes that route?
Yeah, I mean, everybody that I've talked to, I've played with Buck. 2010 in spring training, we were assigned to Frederick together. And I mean, we spent a lot of time together. He's a great dude. He's very down to earth. He's just like his personality is so infectious. You know, he's always positive. Like, he loves going to the ballpark. He loves baseball, and I feel like that feeds through his players. And if you ever looked at a guy who would have been a great manager, he was one of them. Like, he was a student of the game. Whether if we either one of us weren't playing that day, like, just sitting there and having conversations about like what we see about a young guy on the mound right now, like quickly picking up how he's tipping his pitches. Like, he was always studying whether he was in or out of the game. It didn't matter. And I feel like that radiated through everybody that he was around in Bowie and in Norfolk. And I mean, I've talked to some other guys. Ryan McKenna absolutely raves about Buck, just how he is every day. If you're down in the dumps, he can pick up on it. And he brings you to the side. He just chats with you. And McKenna flat out said, he's like, he's invested in your life, not as just a ball player. Like, so he wants to make sure you're okay. He asks about your family, like, what do you like to do on your, downtime and stuff. Like, he's just a generally good person. And I think, I mean, it speaks volumes how many games they won in those two levels, how guys like and perform for him. You know, you see a lot of talent in the minor leagues sometimes and they just don't win. I mean, the Orioles were winning a lot of games. You know, even last year when the pitching really wasn't great in Norfolk, but they found a way to start like rallying around it, and the pitching got way better towards the end of the year. You know, we plucked a lot of good players from Norfolk, and they still found ways to win. Granted, they had J.D. Davis and, you know, other big league players on that roster, but, you know, nobody's ever really had anything bad to say. And I think bringing his infectious personality here, it kind of gels with Brandon, because Brandon's actually kind of the same way. He's real outgoing. He doesn't look like it when the cameras hit him on the dugout and stuff, but he's an infectious guy. He's always smiling. You know, he's doing the same kind of stuff Buck is. So if you did replace Brandon with a guy like Buck, you're not missing a whole lot, which I think kind of plays into it. My worry is the Orioles. I'm in the minority here. I think the Orioles are a good baseball team, and I think they're going to do a lot of good things this year. My worry is another team swoops in and takes Buck before that opportunity presents itself, because he's respected around baseball. And you're always looking at teams that, and I don't know how the coaching pecking order goes. If like a first base coach is considered like a higher value than a bench coach or whatever his role is. I don't know how that pecking order goes, but so many teams are always trying to like upgrade their bench coaches, and then eventually they become managers. Whether that be in the minor leagues first or not, I don't know. I don't know how the whole pecking order goes, but I would be afraid that somebody tries to poach Buck at the end of this year.
Yeah, and that's the path that Brendan Hyde took. You know, he was a minor league manager of the year. He won a minor league championship in the Marlins organization. He was a minor league manager with the Cubs, and he became a Cubs bench coach before getting the big league job with the Orioles. And there may have been a lot of people talking about Brendan Hyde the way we're talking about Buck Britton right now. You know, and I look at a guy like Buck Britton, and I see a guy who has the qualities that you said, but then on top of that, like he wins. He wins baseball games, and these guys, because of that infectious personality, because he's a baseball lifer, and he just really is a student of the game. It seems like these players tend to gravitate towards him. My only concern is if the Orioles feel like they need to move in a different direction and off of Brandon Hyde, Buck Britton's going along the same path as him. Are they going to be reluctant to hand the next managing job to Buck Britton? Because look, we just tried this. We just had a guy who was a minor league manager, became a big league bench coach, and we gave him his first managing gig. And we had success, but not the success we were looking for. Do we want to go down that same path again, or do we want to go out there and get the Terry Franconas of the world? And so you have to kind of wonder what their mindset would be moving forward if they decide to move off of Brandon Hyde. And then there's also Robinson Chirinos, and we've heard it a number of times that he's believed to be a future big league manager. This is his first coaching gig, you know, and Adley's best defensive year was his rookie year when he came up and was playing with Robinson Chirinos, and they apparently got along wonderfully, and Adley learned a lot from Robinson Chirinos. And I think that's a big part of why he's here, because of Adley Rutschman, and because of kind of the downfalls that we saw with Adley's game on both sides last year. But I also think that, you know, there has to be a little bit of let's see what this guy can do and how he interacts with the players from a coaching perspective. And then I also start to wonder, does Brandon Hyde feel the pressure? Do you think he was kind of given any assurances when they added these guys to staff? How much say did he have in adding these guys to staff? Is that completely a Mike Elias, Vidal, and E. Rosenbaum move, or was that a Brandon Hyde move? How much pressure is he going to be feeling, knowing that these guys are future big league managers?
I don't know if I think because he's been in the situation that they're now in, I don't know if he feels pressure, so to say. Baseball, I don't know how to quite explain this, but people bring guys in with the expectations to help them grow their career. I don't think he would hold anything back from them. I don't feel like he would, feel any kind of pressure from them, because his job right now is to kind of mentor them anyway. He was mentored in Chicago, so all these guys were in the Marlins organization besides Buck, and they all moved to Chicago together. It was like Andy Haynes, John Maley, Brandon Hyde. It was a ton of the guys from the Marlins. And this was when the Marlins were good, back when I was there in 08, 09. Then they moved over to the Cubs, and the Cubs won the whole thing. Most of that organization would come from the Marlins. And then they've kind of started to branch out around baseball. Tariq Brock is in Pittsburgh, dealing with their outfielders and stuff. They're all kind of spread around now, and the Orioles sucked in a lot of them. Tim Cousins, the bullpen coach, was also with the Marlins. He was my catching coordinator. A lot of these guys, Freddie Gonzalez came from the Marlins. I forget the other two guys they let go, but they also came from the Marlins. They all know each other. They all groom each other to make the next jump. I don't think Brandon would hold anything back or feel, because that's just how baseball works. If he would get fired this year and Buck would take over, there's a very real shot that Brandon Hyde would have a job in probably 15 minutes, right? One of the guys that he's coached with over the years would bring him to the next organization. Would that be on a big league team? I don't know. But he would have a job. And that's just kind of how baseball works. Like, you're always looking for the best guy for the job, whether that be minor or major. You're always looking to teach. I mean, you even think about, like, player-wise, like, there's a competition with the guy that you might be playing with or against every day on your same team, like, for playing time, but you're still there cheering them on, because you're getting paid to. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think they're used to it at this point.
And I certainly am not trying to allude to any kind of idea that he would hold something back. Maybe manage a little bit more timidly or a little bit more aggressively. Holding something back would only hinder him in every aspect of his career. The team wouldn't play as well. He'd be unlikely to get future jobs in any position. So I wouldn't assume that he wouldn't expect that he would hold anything back. I just wonder if he would manage in a way that isn't his style, that he starts doing something different to try and keep a job, knowing that somebody's breathing down.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's anybody's personality. When your back's up against the wall, you change how things work. I could see him potentially getting even more aggressive this year, hopefully sending more runners in motion, using the bullpen a little bit differently. I was okay with how the starters were handled most of last year, especially kind of early on. We've seen a lot of guys coming out 4 2/3 or 5 1/3. With the amount of injuries that we had, I felt like that was fine because most of the staff made it, most of the year. Grayson was a little bit of an outlier, but I felt like they did their best there. The lineup, I mean, how many times did we look at a lineup and say, okay, that's a punt lineup. What the hell is that? And they go out and score 10 runs. Like, that's baseball. Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit more aggressively would help the Orioles, especially in the base paths, because we all know how an aggressive running team changes the entire game. We saw it against Kansas City.
Yeah. A bunch of times against Kansas City. This team has a lot of team speed, and I don't feel like it's utilized. Now, look, Gunnar stole 20 bases, Hendrick stole 30 bases. But a guy like Jorge Mateo did not run as much as I expected him to. I expected to see Jackson Holliday pinch run a lot more, especially in the playoffs, and we didn't really see that. There's a lot. Jordan Westburg is sneaky fast. There's a lot of speed on this team, and I feel like this is especially with the new rules to make it easier to steal bases. I would expect that this team would steal 80, 90 bags, and maybe they did. But I felt like at the beginning of 2023, when those new rules were implemented, the bigger bases and all that, they stole like 5 bases on opening day. They stole like 12 bases in that first series against Boston. And then slowly but surely, they just stopped stealing bases. It looked like you were going to have 50 steals from Cedric and 75 steals from Jorge Mateo. And the next thing you know, they both had a season about 30, 35 steals, which is good, but not the way that they started. I just feel like this team does not run as much as you would expect. Today's show brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including conversations with Trey Mancini, Mike Bordick, and all the college lacrosse coaches in the state of Maryland, you can find them all now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And as always, watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. At PressBoxOnline.com/radio or right here at Facebook and YouTube. And, we kind of started shifting towards that lineup a little bit. And Zach, you and I both have a general wonderment about this team with regards to who is going to hit third for this team.
Yeah.
Last year, it was either Anthony Santander or it was Ryan O'Hearn. When the offense really started to struggle in the second half, they moved Gunnar into the 3-hole. He did not flourish there. And I think a lot of that, Zach, was putting a lot of pressure on Gunnar to get this team out of the dumps when their offense really started to become stagnant. And we saw Gunnar kind of shrink in the spotlight a little bit when it came to trying to, because you could tell that he felt like he had to carry this team, that this is his team and it's his responsibility to be that guy instead of just knowing he is that guy and just playing his game every day. And that's something I'd like to see him step forward with this year, is just be that guy. Know you're that guy, like Yuki told him, you're that dude, go be that dude and just play your game. But I think that Gunnar should be hitting third for this team on opening day. I think he should be their 3-hitter from day one. Maybe you have Kowser leading off. Maybe you put Mullins back in the leadoff spot. But I think that Gunnar Henderson is your best and most productive hitter. He should be hitting third in your lineup. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to be hitting leadoff to start the year. You had mentioned this to me last night. Who should hit third for this team? Because right now, outside of Gunnar, there's no leading candidate in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually just pulled it up here. The entire roster who hit third last year. Now, Heston only had 3 at-bats, but he had 2 hits. Ryan McKenna hit 1,000 with 1 at-bat. But when you look at everybody who primarily did it, so Mountcastle had it in 38 games, hit 258. That was the best. Ryan O'Hearn had it for 50 games, hit 250, second best. Gunnar had it for 33 games, hit 246. 5 home runs, respectable. Mountcastle and O'Hearn both hit 7. And then Santander had it for 40 games, hit 230 with 13 home runs. Now, O'Hearn had the most RBIs, and Mountcastle had, or then Santander, then Mountcastle, and then Gunnar only had 17. I think what really killed us was all 4 guys struck out over 30 times. And especially when you look at Gunnar and Mountcastle playing only 30 games in that role, you're looking at a strikeout per game. I don't know. So look, and I said it to you last night. I don't know if Jordan Westberg is the guy. I feel like he's probably our most complete hitter. He only had 3 at-bats last year in the 3-hole, didn't get a hit. I'm not going to hold that against him. I had no idea Cedric Mullins ever hit in the 3-hole last year. That's impressive. Nick Maton even hit in the 3-hole. So they tried everybody, it looks like, and it just didn't pan out.
Well, those guys are probably in where maybe Mullins didn't start
right.
As a defensive replacement or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now Westberg is probably your best bet for right now. Long term, I think this team benefits if Jackson Holliday becomes a leadoff hitter. A guy who comes in and walks a ton, uses the whole field. Look, if Holliday can come up and hit 260 in a leadoff spot with his speed, and you can let Gunnar hit in the 3-hole and without much pressure, especially with Tyler O'Neill behind you this time, if it's against a lefty. But I think this year we'll have more guys that are going to put the ball in play a little bit more. I'm a big fan of Heston's bat. I think he controls the bat very well. Westberg, same thing. So there's more protection this year. Having those guys behind Gunnar in a 3-hole, if he gets there, it's not a dog against Anthony Santander, but with him hitting behind Gunnar, yeah, there was a power threat, but there was a big strikeout threat too. So I don't think that Gunnar saw his best pitches. But with a guy like Holiday getting on first, even if Adley gets out next. But now you have the threat of speed. Last year we didn't have a whole big threat of speed when Gunnar was hitting a 3-hole. The threat of speed turns a sharp slider at your knees into a fastball because you're worried about guys running. And Gunnar can turn that fastball into Utah Street real quick. That's how things kind of start to move together. Now, with Gunnar leading off, does he pose a running threat? Sure. Not as much. I don't mind Kowser leading off either. If he can see some more pitches. I just think Westberg right now is probably, to start the season, is probably your best 3-hole hitter. Just because I just feel like he handles the bat well. 2 strikes doesn't matter. He can hit the ball to right field. You throw it on the inside, he'll hit it in the left field for a line drive. You make a big mistake, he's going to drive it out of the ballpark at any point in the field. And I expect a big year out of Westberg. I think he hits north of 275, close to, if not more than 30 home runs. He just has that kind of bat control that he can do all this. I just don't know if they're going to use him or not.
See, ideally for me, right, and you and I think we both agree on this. Maybe the timing of it is a little bit different, but we both agree that by the time the season is over, Jackson Holiday is going to be your everything.
I hope.
I think that's what's going to happen. I look at him. I look at the on base abilities. I look at the hit tool. I look at the speed, and I think that he is a prototypical leadoff hitter. And as out of your leadoff spot, he's going to hit 20.
He reminds me so much of Jose Altuve. Just a smaller guy that just has good bat control, a good eye.
I can
punish.
See that.
Yeah, he'll punish a mistake.
He has
I think your internet's cutting out a little bit.
Sorry, everything. I missed the last part of it. You just said everything's fed up.
There you go.
But yeah, Jackson for me, I see a guy who I've said this before. I think he'll end up one day hitting 320 in the big leagues, and I think that he's a guy who is going to hit in his best year around 30 home runs. And I think he'll probably hit a lot of triples too. But I also see a guy that's got a great eye. He's going to get on base and steal a lot of bases. He's got elite sprint speed. For me, he screams leadoff hitter. Jordan Westberg, I didn't realize his on base percentage last year was only 312. I'd like to see him get on base more. The strikeouts are actually fairly low for a guy like him. 97 strikeouts in 107 games. I like that number. But just 22 walks in those 107 games. I'd like to see him get on base more. I'm a firm believer that your 3-hole hitter should be able to hit 280, 275, 280 at least, and get on base at a 340, 350 clip, while also being able to drive the ball out of the ballpark at a moment's notice. Right now, Gunnar screams to me 3-hole hitter. And Jordan Westberg, I see him as a 5 hitter. I'd like to have him in the top 4, but when you have Tyler O'Neill, Tyler O'Neill is going to get enough for this team. More often than not, Jordan Westberg to me is a born run producer. So having Gunnar hit third, being protected by guys like O'Neill, Westberg, and then Kowser and Mountcastle, like when Mountcastle or Kowser could legitimately be hitting 7 for you. That means that your team is pretty damn deep when it comes to offensive firepower. And that's before we even mentioned Hesse Persson. And so for me, it all revolves around Gunnar hitting third. If Gunnar hits third, you've got that protection around him. If because Adley's good at bat second. He's hit second for 2.5 years now. Even when he was posting a sub 520 OPS down the stretch, he was still batting second for this team. So Adley's going to bat second for you. And if he's Adley, right, he's your 2-hitter because he gets on base at a high clip. He's got a great eye. And I think he's more the player that was, the starting shortstop, the starting catcher in the All-Star game the first half of the season than he was the guy who couldn't put the bat on the ball the second half. So, but it all revolves for me around Gunnar Henderson batting third for this ball club moving forward. That said, unless Jackson Holiday has a huge year, a huge spring, Gunner's going to be batting leadoff. It's going to be somebody like Ryan Hart, who's going to be who's going to be batting third for this team because he did a lot last year. Brandon Hyde trusted him to pay him $8.5 million. And to start the year, he's going to get as much, if not more, playing time than Heston Kjerstad because he's been there, done that at this point. Kjerstad still has a lot to put. So we have our feelings on who should hit third, but we both realistically know who likely will to start the year. But a lot is going to change with this offense as the season progresses. Because there are a lot of guys that we have a lot of faith in, like Kjerstad, like Holiday, like Cowser and Westberg and Gunnar, who are going to take even more steps forward this year. So, I'm definitely excited to see what's going to happen with this offense for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing with Westberg is it's shocking. I'm pulling it up now. He's a 250 career hitter against lefties, but against righties, he's 270.
Yeah.
That's a pretty decent kicker. Look, if I'm facing righties, put Westberg in a 3-hole. Because I mean, unless you want to use O'Hearn or something like that. But for him being a reverse split guy, that's just weird. He's only got 6 career home runs versus lefties. Now, granted, only 89 games compared to 162. So, I mean, yeah, it's cut in half. But, I mean, O'Hearn, is he good enough to do it against righties? Sure. Same thing. He controls the bat very well. He hits the ball to all parts of the field. He's a tough 2-strike hitter. Is he a power threat in a 3-hole? No, not really. Not every at bat, so to say. You make a mistake, he'll hit it out. But if he hit third, that's fine. I don't have any issues against it. I still think maybe against lefties, likely Tyler O'Neill, unless they want to do Mountcastle first and then O'Neill, because that's 2 really big bats in a row against lefties. The left-handed lineup, I think, is going to be a punt for a while, and until they, besides 3 and 4, obviously. But with Adley, didn't hit great, or he smoked lefties last year. So your 2, 3, and 4, is Gunnar good enough to lead off against lefties? He did decent, Did Jackson probably not yet, at his age. Cowser definitely not. Mullins, I don't know if he even plays against lefties. Mateo, maybe. I wouldn't hate Mateo leading off.
He just doesn't get on base enough. I think Mateo.
No, he doesn't.
When he's playing now, look, Mateo. I think he had like over 1,000 OPS each of the last few years against left-handed pitching. So he has proven that he can break against lefties, which is why I think he and Holiday start the season in a platoon, assuming that Mateo can get back from maybe, because Mike Elias also said that he's not full go yet, that he's not ready to go yet. So that he's
that's kind of concerning. Like he just had a dislocated elbow, right?
No, he had to have Tommy John surgery.
He did.
He had Tommy John surgery on his right elbow. But if you remember, who was the guy for oh my gosh, what was his name? He played shortstop and second base for the Yankees. He had Tommy John surgery, and then 6 months later he was back playing. What was his name? He was a Hispanic guy. He was actually a really good player for a little bit. Didi
Gregorius.
Didi Gregorius, yeah. He had Tommy John surgery, midway through the season, and then he was back ready to go by opening day the next season.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're not a pitcher, you're not throwing nearly as often as a pitcher is, not like in the same game. These position players tend to come back from Tommy John surgery a lot more quickly. So I'm not concerned in the way that I think he's going to miss a good chunk of the season because he had the surgery. I think it was in September or October. I think it was September. He ended up having the surgery when they realized, look, he's just not coming back. And the fact that they ever thought he was coming back, when you saw his arm bend completely backwards, that was never going to happen. So for him to not be a full go just yet, it's only been about 5-6 months since he had that surgery. I think the timeline for a position player is more like 6 to 8 months. So if he can get back towards the end of spring training, but that also gives you that they would not commit to him being ready on opening day, where they were much more confident in Felix Bautista's availability for opening day. And so to me, that also says Jackson Holiday is going to get a Bullpen starts to start the year at second base, whereas I think we were all expecting it to be a platoon to start the year with Holiday and Mateo, where Holiday plays second base against righties, and Mateo's in there against lefties.
That explains the Dylan Carlson signing too, because I think they expected Mateo to play a little outfield this year.
Yeah.
So now Carlson, gets those at bats,
Yeah,
especially against
for
lefties
sure.
because he demolishes lefties.
So now I want to ask you this and before I do that, today's show also brought to you by PressBox's annual Best of issue, which is available now. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gavin Sports Person of the Year honoring Lamar Jackson, and inside, a collection of the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. You can find the Best of issue all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores. You can read it all right now at PressBoxOnline.com. I love to have good segues into my live reads, and sometimes it just isn't able to be done. So neither here nor there. Who is an everyday player for this team? So I look at this roster, and I know that Gunnar Henderson's an everyday player. I believe that Jordan Westberg is an everyday player, whether it's at third base or second base. I believe he's in the lineup just about every single day. After that, and Adley, because if Adley's not catching, he's DHing. Adley's going to play, if healthy, 140, 150 games. Whether that's too much, that remains to be seen. It might be. Hopefully, he comes into camp in a little bit better shape this year. But outside of those three guys, do you really have an everyday player? Like I feel like Ryan Mountcastle should play first base every day, but against lefty, but he doesn't hit righties as good as he hits lefties. O'Hearn seems to mash righties, and you're predominantly facing right-handed pitchers. So who are the everyday players? Because I feel like there should be more than there are for a team that has this much talent.
Yeah, I think they really enjoy their splits. They follow a lot of analytics, so they look for different matchups. I would maybe throw Cowser as an everyday player, just because he hit lefties fairly decent. It's all going to come down to if he could pick up the slider, though. I had the confidence that he can, but he's your best defensive outfielder. He hits with a lot of power, a lot of speed. I know the arm kind of airmails here and there, but he's got a good arm. He actually controls the running game from the outfield more than people realize. I was reading something, they call it a hold. So a guy going on a ground ball from first to third or from second to home. He was like top 10s in baseball. Like, guys don't want to run on him, even though he did airmail a couple. But
his airmails were so egregious that we just remembered them a lot more because the throws were so bad,
Yeah, but he had a couple like darts that guys had no business getting thrown out on, like that ball in the corner in right field where McCann tagged guy out the plate. Like they had no business getting that guy out. Right. Sometimes you just got to go with the bad. But I could see probably him being an everyday player, unless Carlson really, really freaking mashes lefties, and then maybe they sit him down because Carlson's a center fielder. I don't think people understand that. But the whole point, I think the experiment with Mullins against lefties is probably over. They might give him a couple opportunities, but
hit really well against lefties down the stretch, and he hit that home run in the playoffs against Ravens. For the Orioles' only run. So Mullins may never hit 279 again against lefties like he did in 2021, but I think that Brandon Hyde gained more trust in him towards the end of the year last year against left-handed pitchers.
Yeah, well, they also didn't have another option, but
that's true.
But that also allowed Mullins to get more at bats too. So there's that whole equation too. I mean, some of these guys might be better if they got more opportunities. I mean, we clamored for Ryan O'Hearn last year to get more opportunities, and I think the first game was really bad. But then after that, like, he started hitting lefties better. Mm-hmm. So I'm always on the fence against that. I'm not a huge splits guy, but they seem to have it all over the field. I mean, Ramon Urias is a reverse splits guy who hits righties pretty dang good. Carlson hits lefties extremely well. Tyler O'Neill extremely well. Heston hits righties extremely well. Even if you go down, if you look farther, like Kobe Mayo hits righties extremely well, and lefties for some reason not that great. But you're not seeing. He only had like 100 at bats or something like that against lefties last year, and it was like 500 against righties. you don't see too many decent lefties in AAA anymore. I mean, once you're good enough, you're in the big leagues. But that's probably the problem for some of these young guys coming up, like Cowser and such, not because you're just not seeing the level of competition you once did because injuries are so high on the mound nowadays.
Right.
I mean, we can think, just 5 years ago how loaded AAA would be with we call them 4A players, but they're pretty decent arms that would be down in AAA, kind of like stuck. You don't really have that anymore. It's a lot of young guys, and if you're a halfway decent lefty, you're getting a shot somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's kind of hard, but all across the board. I mean, first base, they have a platoon. When Mateo comes back, second base, they probably have a platoon. I don't know how you would platoon Westberg at third, but they're probably going to find a way, whether that be Westberg at second and Ramon at third sometimes here and there. I don't know. The entire outfield is a platoon. That's just their thing. I don't think they're really looking for an everyday player. They would love to have Gunnar Henderson sit down a little bit more often than they do, let him DH. But now they do with Jackson. They have that ability. Last year they really didn't.
So many fans want to see Gunnar move over to third base and potentially have Jackson play shortstop. And
Jackson's arm's not good enough.
Not good enough to play shortstop.
I shouldn't say that. It's good enough. It's not elite. Gunnar Henderson has an elite arm.
Yeah.
And he has elite range. And did he screw some balls up last year? Yeah. But he also made some pretty freaking good plays.
Yeah.
More times than not, we were watching him go and get balls that he probably shouldn't have, or a ball deep in the hole where he probably had no business throwing that guy out, and he did. He's going to get better. I have zero issues with Gunnar Henderson staying short.
Zero concern about Gunnar being a shortstop. It seemed like there was a point last year where it seemed like every night he made one play where you're like, I cannot believe he made.
Yeah, you come home and watch it 5 times, every night.
He's that dude over there. And you were talking about Colton Cowser and his arm. I looked it up. 96th percentile for arm strength.
Yeah.
50th percentile for arm value, which means that a lot of those throws were pretty errant. And that, when you have an arm like that, you feel like you can make every throw. And so then you try to make every throw, and a lot of times you overthrow it, and it comes out the way it did with Colton Cowser. And that's a young player.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to do a lot at the big league level. As he settles down, becomes a more seasoned player, I'll bet you see that arm value metric start to tick up quite a bit.
Oh, for sure.
With big league coaching and him getting more comfortable in his own skin at the big league level, he's gonna become a much better, much more accurate thrower, because we know the arm strength there is the accuracy.
Don't be shocked if you see him wearing black tape this year above his or underneath his on his wrist on the glove hand, and a little bit of pine tar going to be on there. Just a little bit.
So?
Oh yeah, I used to do it.
Is that allowed for players, like for position players?
Yeah, because think about it. How many different balls get thrown out every freaking pitch, right? You got a brand new baseball. Sure, it's mudded a little bit, but it's a brand new baseball, and it gets hit right to you, and you got to make a play, and that's a slippery ball. So a lot of position players, you don't cake it on there, obviously, but you do just enough. And I mean, you just kind of rub your fingertips on it every so often, especially when it's 100 degrees outside and you got sweat just dripping down your whole arm into your fingertips and stuff. You got to touch it every so often. And then you wipe it on the ground, because remember, you're allowed to do it on the mound. You can touch it as long as you don't go to it's your lips. You can lick your fingers, but then you have to wipe it off. Mm-hmm. But it's the same thing. You can touch it, wipe it in the grass. Your fingers just have a little bit more traction. I think somebody maybe Adam Jones might be putting that little bug in his ear this year.
That would be something to look out for, man. That's one of the cool things. A lot of cool things about having you on the show, man. But getting that little bit of an intel from a former professional player.
Oh, I used to put it in when I was a catcher. I would put it right here, like that little seam inside the glove. So when I would catch it, I'd rub it, and I'd throw it back.
That's I never knew the position players did that. You know what I mean? And you're right.
You're sweating like crazy.
At any time that you put the ball is put in play or made contact with, they throw it out and get a new baseball. They must use 300 baseballs every game.
I think it's more than that.
It's like they use a ton of baseball, so it would make sense if he wanted to get kind of a little bit of that tack so that he could, get a little bit more on his throw and be more accurate. it would make a lot of sense. That's something we're going to look out for now. Like now that you pointed that
Yeah,
out.
because and I have a couple of them upstairs. The leather is slick. There's almost no seams to them whatsoever, especially coming from AAA to the big leagues, and that's why a lot of pitchers struggle. The seams are different lengths or different height, I should say. So the more you move up, the lower the seams get, and to a point where the big league ball, like the leather and the seam, are like almost the same height. So there's really nothing to grab onto. And if you're a guy out there and you're sweating like crazy, now obviously when you get better and more mature and you played in the league longer, you learn how to do it. But when you're just kind of pretty new, the only thing you're in mind is I got to throw this guy out. And I got to throw it as hard as I can, and that ball's going to go sailing if your fingers are just even clammy. Trust me, I've done it. I've thrown the ball into the stands a couple times.
Oh, I have never played close to the level that you play at, but I've made quite a few bad throws in my day, like quite a few. So if I were to go to like Dick's, right, and buy their official Rawlings Major League Baseball, is that the same ball that they're actually using? Like if I were to like feel the seams on that, it does. I don't think it is.
No.
I've never noticed like how flat the seams are on the Major League Baseball.
I posted a picture. I'll have to go and find it and send it to you. It's pretty bad. Like I started with like a college ball, and then like just the rookie ball. They're kind of similar, and then like each level that you moved up, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's why a lot of guys are like, "Oh, these guys can't throw strikes at the big league level." Like that's why Sagano's been in the States for a little while, because that ball is also different. You know, it's still little things that a lot of people just don't think about, and it takes time to learn it.
You would think that the baseball would be universal.
No.
You would think that it would be.
Nope, the weights are different and everything.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Today's show brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. You know, this is maybe the earliest this entire offseason that we're getting to the fan interaction here, but we're going to get into it. Birdland, he wants to say, I think he said this last week, I still say our pitching rotation is just as good as the team that won 101 games 2 years ago. Look, they've got veterans in there. They've got a more seasoned Grayson Rodriguez. Their rotation is going to be good. I think the bullpen is going to dictate how good the rotation is. They don't have that ace, and I don't think they're going to get that ace. I think they're hoping that Grayson Rodriguez takes that step forward, but I think they're done. I don't think they're making any significant trades to bring in a legitimate top of the rotation starter, and there's nobody out there on the free agent market left. So this is what their rotation is right now. So I think it's good. I don't know how great it is.
I think it's balanced. I think it's probably the fairest word to use. They're not great. They're good. They're not bad either. And when I say balanced, like this rotation is more than capable of completing 5 innings every night, in my opinion, with less than 4 runs. I mean, if this rotation gets you every night through 5, we'll say 2 to 3 runs. Obviously, there's going to be blow-ups here and there. It happens. But majority of the time, we'll say 75% of the time, they're going to win a lot of baseball games. Now, it just comes down to how good's the bullpen. Because in 2023, the bullpen was freaking lights out. I mean, that was peak Cano. That was, coming off peak Perez. Bautista was just throwing lights out. They had, it was when the bullpen showed up, the door was shut. I mean, that was the best way to say it. 7th, 8th, and 9th, the door was closed. If you got to that point with a lead. Last year, it wasn't. This year, it's a question mark. If the bullpen gets back to that point, this rotation is good enough for this team to win 95-plus games because it's balanced.
I look at this team, right, and you look back at 2012, right? 2012, the team, they went from 69 wins to 93 wins. They make the postseason. Jim Johnson, it converted like 51 of 54 save opportunities. The bullpen was every main cog in that bullpen had an ERA below 3. That bullpen, if you go back and look at that 2012 bullpen, they were absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
Then you look at 2013. Jim Johnson saved 50 games, but he also blew 9. He blew 9 saves that year. The bullpen wasn't as good. 2013, they were a good team. They weren't great, and they missed the playoffs. Fast forward now, 2023, a solid rotation, not great, but a solid rotation. with a lights-out bullpen, they won 101 games. 2024, you don't have Felix Bautista. Craig Kimbrell couldn't get dudes out the second half of the season. You lose you lose Webb and Cooler for extended stretches in the second half, and then suddenly your bullpen, which really the piece that you were missing was Felix Bautista in 2024. They were good. They were not great. When everybody got hurt, they were awful. And it's very similar to 2012, really good team. 2013, good team, not quite as good, and they missed the playoffs. 2023, amazing team, gets to the playoffs. 2024, good team that could have been even better than 2023 without the injuries. They get to the playoffs, but they don't do anything. I think that there's a lot of similarities there. Birdland Sports says, I think the bullpen is just as good, if not better, than it was 2 years ago. I believe in Felix. I believe in Dominguez. I believe in Dominguez in an eighth inning role. I believe in Felix if Felix is Felix. If Felix is the mountain as opposed to just Felix Bautista, right? If he is that guy, this team could win 95 to 100 games because he's the best he's the best closer in baseball. He's got a long way to go to prove that, and the fact that they're saying it's going to be a slow ramp up for him, he's not full go to start spring training, that's where the nerves come in, because what's the contingency plan otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Dominguez. I trust him in the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. You just don't know. The 9th is a whole different mentality. And, I mean, Dominguez has done it in his career. Soto has done it in his career. I don't know. It's just scary to not know. Excuse me. I would have just felt better with Tanner Scott because he's done it, and he's done it in big moments. Kirby Yates would have made me feel pretty good. I don't like having question marks, and I feel like this team has now. Did they pan out a lot? Sure, but we've just always seemed to have question marks. I guess that's the beauty of the business. Then I don't know.
Yeah, it's if everything goes according to plan, they're in a good spot. But we saw last year. I mean, this team was the best team in baseball. And then in a 3-week span, they lost Kramer for a month. They lost Weeds for the season. They lost Radish for the season. They lost Tyler Wells at the beginning of the year. The team went from being the best team in baseball to just a good baseball team. And they have that potential to be that way again. Now, look, the Dodgers are clearly, on paper anyway, the best team in baseball. I think the Orioles have an opportunity to get right back to where they were in 2023. But you're expecting a lot of things to go right unless you're telling us that you can't really expect. You can't depend on that.
Right.
And speaking of that, some things that need to go right. Jackson Holliday, Tyler O'Neill. John Doe wants to know our thoughts on Jackson Holliday and Tyler O'Neill this year. Zach, I'll let you start off with this one.
I just think you look at Jackson's pedigree. I mean, he's grown up around the game. His dad was a pretty damn good player, in my opinion. And Jackson just kind of has that mature demeanor to him. I don't think he's going to let last year bother him whatsoever. He's just going to go and put the work in. Get back to what got him there, watching good pitches, not chasing the ball too often, using the whole field, driving the ball when a mistake is made. It's different at the big league level. And we watched a lot of guys come up, struggle their first little stint, and then they come back the second time and they're really freaking good. And we've had multiple players on this team do the same thing. Gunnar kind of struggled at first. Remember when guys wanted to send him down? Adley was pretty bad at first. Jordan Westberg was okay. Kowser was real bad. I just think he falls right in line. He comes back this year and has a really good season. Tyler O'Neill, look, they could either hide him from righties and he's fantastic, or they can let him play against righties and he's kind of just, the numbers overall are more in the average line. It just depends on what they want to do with him. A healthy Tyler O'Neill is damn good, in the field especially. And at the plate, in my opinion, you keep his ass out of the weight room and he'll stay healthy.
Yeah. I with regards to Tyler O'Neill, we know what he's capable of. 2021, he had a higher award than Bryce Harper, who won the MVP. Right? Yeah. We know what Tyler O'Neill is capable of when he's healthy. He's just got to prove he can stay healthy. I mean, he missed over 30 games last year and he still hit 31 home runs. This is a guy who I think can hit upwards of 40 home runs and play and give you good defense in the outfield. But like you said, he's got to stay out of the way.
Yeah, he can deadlift 1,000 pounds. You don't need to do that as a baseball player.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when we say stay out of the weight room, no, go work out. You can work out, but like don't deadlift 1,000 pounds. We don't need you bench pressing 500 pounds. We know you're strong, dude. Stay healthy for a 162 game season, and have to see him get into the playoffs and win some October baseball games. If he can stay healthy, and I think that's a huge goal for the Orioles this year, I think he's a solid player for this team. He's got to stay on the field. As far as Jackson Holliday is concerned, I mean, look, after his junior year in high school, he was considered a back-end first-round talent. Mm-hmm. And he made the necessary improvements to become the best high school baseball player in the country. Was the first overall pick in the draft. He set a goal for himself to make it to the big leagues in 2 years. He did that. He got to the big leagues in 2024. He did what he said he wanted to do. It didn't go the way he wanted. You're not going to convince me that Jackson Holliday, the son of Matt Holliday, didn't give everything he had into this offseason to make himself that much better of a baseball player. I think that he's going to be eye-popping for some people. I think you're going to see a completely different player from day one, from opening day on. And you're going to see a guy driving the ball into the gaps, especially to the opposite field, laying down a lot of triples. Do I think he's going to hit 320 this year? No. Do I think he's going to hit 260 to 280 and get on base at a 350 clip? I 100% think that's what he's going to do. Yeah. I think that people are going to be talking about Jackson Holliday in the same regard as they talk about Gunnar Henderson by the time the season's over. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people who wrote off a 20-year-old who was getting his first taste of big league push. Randall, he wants to know who has more time attached, Padres King or Seattle Brian Wu. I looked it up when I saw this at the beginning of the show. Brian Wu is not a free agent until 2030. So he has
2030? God, that's going to take a lot.
Yeah, so he has a lot more team control. So Brian Wu would be the guy, which means that the Orioles would have to give up probably a Basayo and a Mayo to get somebody like that. So and Michael King, he could be had. He absolutely could be had. I don't think that the Orioles are trading for a top of the rotation starter. I think they're looking into it, but I think they want somebody at their price, and I don't know how many top of the rotation guys are out there that the Orioles are going to get at their price.
Right. It's not going to be like last year.
Yeah. Randall, Padres Adam would fit nicely in the O's bullpen. I looked up Jason Adam for the Padres. He started out with the Tampa Bay Rays last year, got traded to the Padres. That's a really good dude, a really good pitcher. Had a sub-2 ERA last year. He's been sub-3 for the last 3 seasons. Bad 2021, but he really didn't become like a full-time bullpen presence until 2022. He's been lights out ever since. Would love that guy. How much is it going to cost to get him? Are you going to get him in a package with a Michael King or a Dylan Cease? What are you going to have to give up in that package to get them? Zach, your thoughts on would the Padres be willing to trade Jason Adam, especially after trading for him at the deadline?
I don't think the Padres are looking to move anybody that has team control, especially cheap team control. They're only looking to part ways with guys that, one, they're probably not going to sign so they can refill, and they just don't have enough in the minor leagues to field a team next year right now. Now, if they get their ownership stuff figured out or whatever, then they're probably fine. If it goes to court and gets really ugly, they might be shipping a whole bunch of guys off. So it really just depends. I think right now they're down bad and they're trying to hold on as long as they can, but I don't know. It's sad for baseball, but you kind of had to see it coming. When they trying to spend. I mean, it started with Eric Hosmer. When they gave that lucrative contract to him. And then you got Machado and Tatis and Bogarts and Luis Arraez is making way more money than he probably should be, and they're going to just try and get rid of guys that they can. I mean, they might move one giant contract. It just depends on who wants to take that on. I don't know. Might be Manny Machado. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a number of big contracts there, and I also just don't think they've won enough baseball games to justify it. You signed all these guys, and you have, I think, 2 NLCS appearances, but you still haven't found a way to get past the team in blue that's always looking down at you in the division. So it's. I
mean, good for them for trying. I mean, their fan base had a good time doing it. They showed up almost every night. A lot of fans. They tried it and it didn't work, and that should probably be an eye opener for a lot of fans and a lot of teams. Like, they were willing to try it, and now they're broke. So you got to be a little responsible about some of this stuff.
Yeah, look, I want the Orioles to spend as much money as everybody else does, but I also don't want them to be in the situation the Padres find themselves in, 5 years from now.
Right.
The goal is to have a window that really doesn't ever close, and spending $250, $300 million. So much as I would love to see them do it, because I want to see a World Series in Baltimore, I don't want to spend that kind of money to have this team be terrible again.
100%.
100%. Tyler Brown, how are you so sure it's not an organizational philosophy, and Buck wouldn't be making similar decisions to Brandon Hyde? And that's the thing, and that's why I asked Zach, his opinion on Brandon Hyde. Is it Brandon Hyde making these calls? How much is it his call as opposed to the front office's call? I don't know. I have to believe, though, that in-game managerial decisions are being made by the manager. I don't think that Sig and Mike are calling down to Brandon when it's the sixth inning and the starting pitcher's out of gas and saying, hey, I want you to bring in this guy. I think that's 100% Brandon Hyde's call. So when it comes to and look, the Orioles, so when it comes to the bullpen, that's on Brandon Hyde. When it comes to pinch hitting, look, the Orioles had a lot of success from their pinch hitters last year, but it's also because the starting lineup didn't. A lot of those times it was Ryan O'Hearn was the guy sitting on the bench, or Ryan Mountcastle was the guy sitting on the bench,
or Austin Hayes against a lefty.
Yeah, like those guys. That's because you have a really good bench. What happens if you don't have a really good bench? Those numbers come down. Now look, he still has to make the call. Those are also, in my opinion, pretty obvious calls to pinch hit Ryan O'Hearn against the right-handed pitcher late in the game for Ryan Mountcastle when you have a guy on base and the score is close. Those are pretty obvious calls too. So I always kind of looked at that as like when people would trumpet the fact that, oh, well, look at how great the pinch hitters are. Well, look at who we had in the situations he was putting them in.
Yeah.
But that's also taking something away from him, and I don't want to just be a straight Hyde hater. I'm willing to accept that they could be, to acknowledge that it could be organizational philosophy as I continue to blow the eight. Zach, your thoughts?
So organizational philosophy, is it? Yes. Prior to the game, they come down, they talk about certain things. Games just don't always flow that way. So yeah, in-game stuff is always done by the manager. Outside of certain situations, say 2023 Grayson Rodriguez's rookie season, I can about promise you that Mike probably picked the phone up a couple times and called the dugout phone and say, hey, like, he's young, it's his first year, like let's pull him out here in the fourth, fifth inning. Like, I've seen enough today. Those kind of conversations happen in-game a lot, primarily more with starting pitchers than anything. May have maybe happened here and there with Jackson Holiday. I doubt it, but maybe you don't see it too much. It's more with young starting pitching is anytime a GM will call in mid-game and make a decision. So yeah, 99% of the time, anything in-game is the manager.
Yeah, and that's always been my point. It's when people are saying, you guys really think that Brandon Hyde's calling shots in-game? Absolutely. I think
he has an idea of what they want prior to the game, but the game has to go that way for them to get what they want.
And to Zach's point earlier, he also does know who's available, who's not available, who's got a stomach bug, who maybe isn't feeling great, maybe who went out and drank way too much the night before and is hungover. Like he knows that too. So there's sides to both. There's different sides to it.
Yeah.
Randall says Bregman would have solved a lot of issues and added the flexibility. So with Max Fried or Blake Snell or Corbin Burns, like Bregman, I'd love to have him here. If the Orioles are looking at this team, they're saying, yeah, but do we want to pay Bregman $30 million a year to play second base when we can pay Jackson Holiday, $820,000 this year to play second base? He might have a better year. I think, and same thing with Jordan Westburg. I think they look at their roster and they're like, Bregman would be nice, but we don't really need to spend that kind of money for him when we have guys who we think could be just as good.
Yep. Yeah, there's no argument against that. I mean, does he help? Sure. But it also goes back to what we've kind of been talking about is we are hanging a lot of eggs in certain baskets and praying it works out. Would I mind giving Bregman a 2-year, $60 million deal? Probably not. what he wants is a 5 or 6 year deal, and you're not giving anybody that contract right now until Gunnar Henderson is locked up.
Yeah, and that's the point that everybody, that most people fail to realize is if you want to lock up Adley and Gunnar, and it should be Gunnar first. Adley might happen first because it's going to be easier, I think. But if you want to lock up Gunnar long term, you can't give money to Alex Brayton. You can't give money to Max Fried. You're willing to give it to Corbin Burns because he's been here. You know it's what the fan base wants, and you see what he can do for your team in a big game. But for the most of the other free agents, they're expecting that we want those big long-term deals. Well, then say goodbye to Gunnar. When his arbitration eligibility is. So it's the give and the take of the game.
Yep.
Daniel corrected me, and thank you for that. Left elbow ball was Mateo's glove hand. You're absolutely correct. When he got his glove caught under Gunnar, and that's what caused the elbow dislocation. So you're right. It is his left hand, which then his left elbow, which then tells me that maybe he's not comfortable swinging the bat in.
Yeah, because that's his lead arm and the follow through arm. So once you get to that point where you're fully extended after a swing, your elbow is fully locked. Yeah, it hurts.
Absolutely. I was running one day. This was years and years and years ago, and I went. I tried to jump over. It's like a 5-mile run. It was towards the end of the run, and there was a big box in the middle of the sidewalk, and there was a car on the street. So I jumped over the box, and my legs were a lot more tired than I thought, and I tripped over the box and it came down hard on my left hand, and hyperextended my elbow a little bit. I can't tell you how many times I went to the batting cage, even to this day, where I will overextend my lead arm and my elbow really hurts. One time I was just walking in a restaurant, I just reached my hand up to touch a boot, and it sent this shooting pain down my elbow, and I barely touched it. The elbow is no joke, especially with the lead arm when it can get bent backwards like that. It's no joke.
Yep.
So he's probably still experiencing lingering pain from that injury when he swings it back. Randall says Arias got a lot better the more he played last year. Ramon Arias is a quality baseball player, and he hits really well in runners in scoring position. He doesn't quite play the same defense at third base that he played when he won a Gold Glove in 2022, I believe it was, but he plays still solid defense at multiple positions. I don't think he's made an error at second base.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lot better at second base than people think, and he can play shortstop and pinch. The thing about Ramon Arias is that he's a good baseball player. He's not a great baseball player. He was a great player on a bad Orioles team in 2021. You've gotten to the point now where you don't want to start him over Westbrook. You don't want to start him over Holiday. And so that's the only reason, when you would be in the lineup, you'd be like, I don't want to see Arias play. I want to watch Jordan Westbrook play. And that's where all the ire came. But he is a good baseball player on a lot of good baseball teams. The Orioles are kind of into that great team realm where Ramon Arias is a bench player. He could start for more than half the teams in baseball. Yeah. Anything else? Any other comments that you kind of are dying to talk about it on the show today, Zach?
I think Daniel pitches one about Ryan Brazier. I mean, maybe a decent fit. He hasn't pitched a whole lot. As far as much as we use bullpens, I want to see guys with 50 plus appearances. When you're sitting in below 40, I don't. At that point, you're in Keegan Aiken status, where you're only pitching really every so often if the game's out of hand. And I don't know if you're going to waste another bullpen spot for that. Not with the way that we use the bullpen. But could he help? Is his stuff good enough? Yeah. I just don't know. He hasn't done it in a long time where he's had 60 plus appearances. And I just, if you bring somebody in, you need somebody capable of going 60 plus appearances and not falling off in September.
Yeah, and that's the whole point is the Orioles bullpen as it currently stands good? Yeah, the Orioles have a really good bullpen right now. So you're not going to bring in somebody that's just another face in the crowd, right?
Yeah.
You're looking to bring in somebody who takes your bullpen into that elite status, into that Cleveland Guardians, New York Yankees status as far as the bullpen is concerned. With Brian Brazier, I don't think he does that.
Yeah, it's like Jacob Webb. He was a good pitcher. He made some outs for us, but You upgrade him with Kittredge, and that's a solid upgrade. And Brazier, I don't really see him as an upgrade to too many guys. Maybe whoever, like we were talking about earlier, who's that eighth guy? Maybe. But is he better than Cano? I don't know. I don't think he's better than Dominguez. I don't think he's better than Kittredge. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's more like that guy that, I'm comfortable using him with the guys I usually use here and there. That's kind of who he is. The final comment I want to get to, why not Felix from AJ McCurdy? Why not Felix be the setup guy in Sagano, get the closer with his 5-pitch mix? Koji Uehara closed for the Red Sox in 2013 on their way to winning the World Series. That could be their plan. I mean, for all we know, it's Povich or Suarez who's that fifth starter, and Sagano was brought in at $13 million. That's good money for a starter or a reliever. That could be their plan until Felix is, ready to hit the ground running once he gets into big league action. I don't think that. I honestly don't know if that's their plan. I could see it, but I think that Felix is supposed to be the closer in their eyes.
Yeah, I caught Koji, and when I tell you some of the filthiest stuff that I've ever seen, it was. I mean, the ball would move 20 some inches. It was incredible. And Sagano could play the same. I wouldn't hate it at all. I mean, I think we said it last show. He's good enough. The ball moves enough. The difference with Koji is Koji would top out at 97, 98 sometimes. He primarily sat 95, 96. Sagano is around 93, 94. And it comes back to it. Obviously, when you have 6 pitches, you can keep guys a lot more off balance. But if you make a mistake at 93, the game's over.
I don't ever remember Koji throwing it. Like
he would touch it here and there. When he wanted to hum it up with 2 strikes for Boston, he could hum it up. He didn't do it here, but I mean, in the bullpen, you get to throw a little bit harder.
Koji he had a really solid big league career. Like it wasn't long, but he had a really solid big league career. Had pitched in a lot of big games. I said that was the last comment. I do want to get one more. AJ said Kane, Povich, or Rogers will have to be in the rotation since they can't have an already rotation. I mean, they can. Should they? Probably not. Not in a ballpark that is conducive to getting right-handed hitters out. And so it's a fair point. It's a fair point that they may want to have a left-handed pitcher in their rotation. Maybe they're banking on Trevor Rogers bouncing back into form, or maybe Kane Povich taking that next step, which again could allude to the fact that maybe Sagano is ticketed to be in the bullpen. What do you think about that idea? Because we do kind of gloss over the fact they don't have a lefty in the rotation as it currently stands if they go with what we think they're going.
I laughed at it last year, and I made a comment about it, is how many bullpens in baseball have 4 lefties in it? Mm-hmm. And the more I thought about it, I think they do the same thing this year. And why I say that is you have a 5-man rotation that's all righties. Cool, you stack the lineup with lefties. Okay, well, now you're down into the part of the game that matters, and the Orioles have 4 lefties in the bullpen. So now you offensively have to start making moves. Now, granted, I don't think we really trust Keegan Aiken in big spots, but last year you had Danny Coulomb that you trusted. You brought in Soto to be that guy, and they trust Perez enough to use him. So even if it's only 3 guys, I think they might look to do the same thing this year. I mean, you have Aiken again, you have Soto again, you have Perez again, and if Rogers or Povich are good enough to give you a different look, I mean, they both run it up around 95, don't they? Both those guys?
Yeah.
Not consistently, but they run it up there. And I mean, in the bullpen, and I don't see why that doesn't kind of play into their analytical approach, because now you're forcing a team to make, if they follow the same kind of splits, you're forcing them to make more moves than they probably wanted to.
Yeah, and look, this team, and that's why I love baseball, and that's why I love this time of year when we start to get closer and closer to the baseball season, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what to expect. You have no idea what the team is going to do. You think you do, and then they do something that you didn't even think about, right? Yeah. And this team, this entire pitching staff from rotation through bullpen, has a ton of guys in it that can either throw to a 2.5 to 3.5 ERA or a 4.5 ERA. They could be really, really good, or they could be really mediocre or bad. And, it's exciting because we're all banking on them being really, really good. And then we'll all be arguing and being mad online in June and July if any of these guys isn't pitching up to what we think their capabilities are. And that's the beauty of the game of baseball. So
I actually wanted to touch on that because I talked about it a little bit with you. Is where's that fine line that Mike Elias has to walk? Because you got to trust your guys, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't just go out and replace everybody. I would love them to, but you can't, especially as a GM, because, say if a guy has one good year, all right, and then and you don't think it's good enough and you go out and replace him, like, what kind of message does that send a future free agent that might want to sign a multi-year deal? Like, these guys moving on from guys after like a year or two, if they're not giving out excellent production, like, you might lose a guy from that. And then you also might lose the confidence of the player. You might lose, the clubhouse a little bit if they're really behind that guy. That fine line that he has to walk right now is sucks, to be honest with you, because he has to trust his guys to basically perform. Like, and I think he's doing it maybe a little bit more than he should, but you kind of have to. You're in a bad spot.
And you look at CNL Perez last year, ERA is 4.53, right? And that's in 62 games. 62 games, his ERA was 4.53. And so you would think that would be a guy that would be more expendable than maybe a Danny Coulomb. But he's younger, he throws harder. He's out of options, but he's younger and he throws harder. And in 2022, Perez was one of the best lefty relievers in all of baseball. And in 2023, from June, July, and August, he was one of the best lefty relievers in baseball. You've seen enough out of him to know what he can give you. The crap that he gave you the first 2.5 months of 2023, and that he gave you down the stretch last year, that's not acceptable. But you know what's in there, and if he's used properly, you know what he's going to give you. But this is also a guy where if his ERA is 4.53 in June, they're probably doing something about it at that point. So I think that he is walking that fine line, saying, "Look, you've been way more good than bad, but the bad is starting to rear its ugly head a little more than we would like. We're giving you this season again." But he's out of options. They want more flexibility. So I agree with you. That line that he has to walk has to be very difficult. And I think that he is going to make players force his hand before he actually does something.
Yeah, and the thing with Perez, do you remember when they said something about he had like a sore elbow? Mm-hmm. 11 of the 27 runs that he gave up were in September, around the time that they said he had the sore elbow. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe their trust in him is a lot deeper than ours because he was dealing with something. Now, that something might not be to the point where he has to have some kind of surgery, but if he does get back, I mean, he gave up 16 earned runs in, 45 innings prior to, September? So, I mean, that's pretty good. And you got to walk that line.
I have a lot of faith in CNL Perez. You can kind of tell when he doesn't have it because he just misses pretty wildly. Yeah. But when he's on, I mean, you saw how foolish he made a guy like Giordano and Yordan Alvarez. You saw how I was thinking of Giordano Venezuela. You saw how foolish he made Yordan Alvarez look a couple of years ago in Houston. That's who CNL Perez can be, and I see him be that guy more often than not. It's just when he's bad, he's really, really bad.
And he wants the ball. Yeah, he has that bulldog mentality. He doesn't give a shit. Excuse my French. He doesn't care who's in the box. Mm-hmm. He's coming after you. If he's on that day, he doesn't care if it's Aaron Judge or Alvarez or Kyle Tucker. He's coming right at you with his best stuff, and he's going to let you know when he wins that how excited he is. And I love it. I love it about him.
Yeah, a lot of guys on this team have that mentality, and love to see that. When you see Dean Kramer keep saying he wants to go out and throw 300 innings. I love the makeup of this team. I love the players that are on this team, and I have faith that a lot of these guys can reach that potential, and they can even go. They can take those steps forward. They just have to prove it, and we're only a couple of weeks away from that really getting started. February 13th is going to be here before pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training, and then opening day we're less than 2 months away. So really starting to ramp up towards baseball season. I'm getting excited, Zach. I know you're getting excited. If you're like me and you happen to look at the TV last night, you're like, man, there's really no sports to watch right now, and you're waiting for baseball to get ramped up, Baltimore welcomes the excitement of the Blue Lions CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at the CFD Arena from February 25th to March 1st. Some of the best basketball you're going to witness in person. So go get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Zach, always awesome when you join the show. Really appreciate you doing this 2 weeks in a row, too. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners, viewers, fans. Without you, we 100% do not have a show. We are setting records for live viewership like every week, which is awesome. Keep tuning in. We have 192 people watching us at this exact moment. That is awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, trusting us to bring you awesome Orioles coverage. Again, Zach, thank you so much. What can we plug for you before we get out of here?
If you like talking Orioles and seeing some off-the-wall crazy stats because I'm bored at work one day and talking about how guys hit in certain weather degree counts and whatever. PigTown Sports, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I'm pretty much everywhere. Always putting something out.
Yeah, that is for sure. He texted me at like 4:45 in the morning the other day about a particular trade, and I happened to be up most mornings at that time. But that's what happens when you become a dad. So
yep.
That was cool. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's awake texting me about baseball. That's a true baseball life. That was cool. All right, guys.